This is Nick Bruno. Nick, it's so good to have you with me, man. I
Great
appreciate
here,
you doing
Terry.
this. And
Great.
Nick, I've known you for, well, is
A
it my
long
whole
time.
life?
How old were you when you were recording? 9?
The first recollection I have, we were in Cincinnati.
Queen City.
QCA.
Yeah.
I was at one of those big microphones and
Standing on a stool.
that wooden floor. I think I was around 9 years old when we did We've Got the Power. Nick produced the album We've Got the Power for my dad and our family. That was the album I did, Jesus Is Your Ticket to Heaven.
I remember that.
And I would moonwalk on that song.
Yeah. What about the breakdancing on the floor? That was, I always remember that.
In the studio?
Yeah, on the hardwood floor, you were doing the spinning thing and the breakdancing, and yeah, you ruined several takes doing it.
But We've Got the Power, Will Not Be Defeated.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorites, and I believe it's one of my dad's best, if not the best, is The Prodigal.
Prodigal, that was a great album. That was one of the recordings that all the stars lined up.
Yeah.
You know, everything really just fell in place.
Jesus Comes in the Midst of the Storm.
Yeah.
Come On Home.
Come On Home, I love that one.
Great CD.
Yeah.
But you've known my dad for
Long
since
time. Blue Ridge Quartet.
Nick started with Elvis Presley at what age?
Well, when I was with the Stamps and Elvis, I was, let's see, let me think, Terry. I was 28.
So what year would that have been with Elvis?
It was 1969.
Was this the Las Vegas days?
Yeah.
Well, you got to give me a story.
Elvis story? Well, I remember, I hope the fans don't get angry at me for this.
Do we need to edit this?
No. Elvis was sitting up in the suite. I was sitting on a couch like this, and he was sitting next to me, leaning back. And on the floor, there was just a bunch of LP records. And of course, back in that day, there was no CDs.
Right.
You know, so he had a little turntable over there, and he was looking for material. And I remember to this day sitting here and looking down at the top of Elvis's head.
Yeah.
And he had a little bald spot starting right up there, and I thought to myself, my word, Elvis is going bald.
Not the king.
The king.
The king doesn't go bald.
Yeah, well, I guess up in the back it was.
Did you just kind of touch it?
No.
You'd have been fired for doing it.
I'll tell you another quick story. One night up in the suite, you know, Elvis was a big karate guy.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to use me for a dummy. And so he said, Bruno, you stand right here. And so I stood there, you know.
Yeah.
And he did one of his backward kicks and was supposed to miss my knee. But he didn't. He missed it and hit it. Oh, man, that hurt.
Did you get a bonus after that?
No, I got nothing except a sore knee. He was a gospel music lover.
So what started music for you?
I was in Bible college in Green Lane, Pennsylvania.
Mm. Where is that?
That's Green Lane is not far from Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the Assemblies of God Bible College. And a good friend of mine, Eddie Spuler, invited me to go home with him for the weekend, and his family all lived in Philadelphia. So, which we did, and then it was Saturday night, we were kind of looking for something to do, you know, and he said, well, let's go to the quartet concert. I said, what's that? You know,
You'd never heard of a quartet?
I never heard of a Southern gospel quartet. No, the only groups I ever heard of was like Frankie Valli or,
yeah,
you know, that kind of stuff.
How old were you then?
I was 18. So we went to this gospel concert, and man, I'll tell you what, I sat there with my mouth open. I had never heard this in my life. So I had been raised, my dad was a piano player, and I had a really good piano teacher. And so I had this gift that the Lord gave me of the music, you know. Mm-hmm. But at that point, I still hadn't kind of figured out what to do with it.
Was that the night
that was the night
you said, that's what I want to do?
That's exactly what happened.
So it made that kind of impression on you?
I can tell you still who was there. It was the Eastman Quartet, the Couriers, the Weatherford Quartet, and the Blackwood Brothers. Mm. I couldn't stand myself. I mean, I was like, I sat there all night with my mouth open. And so that was the night I decided that the talent that I had, that's what I was going to do with it.
And when was the first time you got to use that talent in that kind of a setting?
Well, it wasn't that long after that that the Keystone Quartet invited me to join the group. Richard Sturban.
Oak Ridge Boys.
Yeah. And at that time, the Keystones were Richard Sturban and Bob DiQuattro and his brother Joe DiQuattro and Bob's wife Esther. And I joined the group as a piano player. And that was the start.
So you were 19?
18
20?
or 19,
Wow.
20, somewhere in there, yeah.
And you've done that for now 50 plus years.
All my life.
What's one of the pinnacles that you can say, man, that was a definitive moment in my career?
Well, I'll tell you the truth of the matter. The most enjoyable thing that I ever did so far was my tenure with the Kingsmen Quartet.
How long were you with them?
6 years, 7 years, somewhere. I left in '78, I believe. I was playing for the Kingsmen, and we would come home, usually be heading home on Sunday night, and then we generally would leave on Wednesday night, you know, to go. But all the time in between there, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, there were a whole myriad of studios in that area. It's what you're familiar with, Greenville, Mark
Absolutely.
V, and then there was a studio up in Kingsport, and one in Charlotte, one in Knoxville. At that time, I was one of the most well-known keyboardists in that area. And I was just playing sessions like crazy. And I finally got to the place where I just couldn't continue to do both. So I felt the Lord leading me to get off the road, and I took a job at Mark V. And that was the beginning of my producing career.
A few months ago, I was outside. I said, Nick, I just saw a movie. I saw your sister's name at the end, Marie Armenia. And Marie had actually worked in our office for a period of time. And I Facebooked Marie, said, I just saw your name. And I said, man, that was so cool to see your sister's name. And Nick looked at me and said, well, Terry, the movie I'm referring to is War Room. And Nick said, well, Terry, you know who that movie was based after? I said, who? He said, my mom. I said, what? Your mom. Tell me a little bit about War Room and how that was based on your mom. Of course, the main character is
Miss Clara. Miss Clara was
the lady who prayed like nobody's business.
Yeah, that was my mom, Molly Bruno. Yep, that's how we were raised. It's interesting. My sister is a really terrific writer. She writes for a lot of Christian magazines, and she does women conventions, that kind of thing. Somehow or another, the people that were producing the Kendrick brothers were in New York, and they were looking for a role model for Miss Clara. Somehow or another, they mentioned my mom. One thing led to another through my sister. They did a couple of Skype sessions with my mom in her house in Spring Hill. And then the next thing you know, they were there. They came there with the cameras and set up cameras in the house and started videotaping, taping her conversations. And some of them are on YouTube now. They were interested in her prayer life. And my mom was definitely a prayer warrior. You know, she was a giant as far as in prayer. And a lot of the things that happened to Miss Clara in that movie were based on my mom's experiences.
Did she ever pray for you when you were out there with Elvis? And
that's the only reason I'm sitting here.
I can imagine. Well, what are you doing now? You're here at our place? And
I have my office here, and we work here at the studio. Right now, I'm right in the middle of 2 projects for the Booth Brothers. I'm just completing a project for the Mattingly family. I'm in the middle of a project with Allegiance.
You still produce?
Still produce.
If someone is watching and they say, man, I've always wanted to get into music, I have a passion, can they get in touch with you and you help them
Absolutely.
With a recording?
Bruno Productions at Comcast.net.
If they wanted to call you?
They could call me at 615-804-5691.
If somebody calls you, gets in touch with you, for groups, quartets, trios, what's the process? What do you bring to the table for an artist or a group?
Well, that's a good question. Most of what I do now is along with the music. You know, I help them find the songs. I help them arrange the songs. I teach them their parts. You know, and supervise every aspect of it, the mix, the vocal session, hire the musicians, write the charts. And then along with that, I do a lot of teaching. I get a great joy out of instructing the younger, I guess I call them newbies, on how to succeed, you know.
Does that be more like an artist development?
Yeah, kind of, yeah, career development, interaction between me and the artist. And they kind of look, it's kind of like a process of osmosis, really. They learn from seeing what I do, and they learn how to do it right. And it's really rewarding to see a young group come in.
Yeah.
And then
like
say,
the
wow.
Booth Brothers.
The Booth
I remember
Brothers.
when you first brought the Booth Brothers to our place over when we were at TBN.
1996. They are amazing.
But that's an example.
That's an example.
That's a great example because they've definitely done very well.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. You've helped many.
Well, I was looking the other day. I don't know if this is totally accurate. I don't really pay that much attention to this kind of thing. I think Cece was checking it out. I believe I've had 9 #1 hits.
With which, what are some of the songs?
Well, I produced Beulah Land.
With
Squire Parsons.
Really?
Yeah.
So that would have been back in the
Oh, Lord, that
80s,
was
70s?
way back
80s?
in the 70s, yeah. Actually, I was kind of co-producer, but I took the credit for it.
Sure. Well, it turned out good.
Yeah.
So. What's some others?
I did Still Feeling Fine with the Booth Brothers. Look for Me at Jesus' Feet. Bible in a Bus Ticket by my friend Laverne Tripp.
yes.
I did that one.
You did that one?
Yeah.
Nick, I didn't know you did all those. Now I'm nervous. Well, Nick, I really appreciate you coming and being with me and just reminiscing and then making your gift and your talent available that you know is God-given.
Yes, thank you.
And I sure appreciate
That's been my honor.
Thank you, sir.